Come on. This is good practice for being a trustee.
Well, if I'm late, there's somebody.
That's normal?
It's a normal place. Can I sneak in?
Yeah, we hope so.
But you're,
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read this a little bit. My name is David Craker. I want to say welcome to the Candidates Forum for those vying for positions as trustee, village president for South Orange Nonpartisan Elections, hosted by the Academy Heights Neighborhood Association. We thank all the candidates in attendance this evening. We would also like to thank all those in the audience who have chosen to take time out of their busy routines to become more informed about our upcoming elections. Finally, we would like to thank Corina for providing a space and for us to hold our forum. So before I go on any further, I need to give you two housekeeping things. If we need to exit quickly, you can certainly go out this way, or you can go out this door right here. It's through sort of a curtain and through there, and it goes right down to the street, or you can go out that way. And we also need you to turn off your phone.
you can use them now, but when they're reserved for the trustees when they are done speaking.
So the few folks who do not would have chairs.
Yeah.
For now, yes. But
Like me, yes.
later.
Thank you, Don, yeah.
Yeah, if you need to sit there now, that's fine.
There's two more up here.
Yeah, there's two more seats in the front.
I'll stay.
That's kind.
Okay, so let me go ahead and explain how this is going to work. So questions for tonight were solicited in advance from members of the Academy Heights Neighborhood Association. Candidates have not been provided questions or topics in advance. We have a very limited time to cover a lot of ground. We ask each candidate to honor time limits on all answers and rebuttals. We also ask that members of the audience refrain from applause and calling out with comments during the proceedings. Doing so will take time away from the candidate's ability to provide their answers. The first portion of tonight's proceedings will focus on questions for trustee candidates and has been allotted about an hour and 15 minutes. Candidates' names and questions to be asked will be chosen at random. Each candidate will be asked one random question. The chosen candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. Once that candidate has completed their answer or their time expires, the remaining candidates will each have the option to use one of 3 allotted rebuttal opportunities. Thank you. Candidates will signal their desire to rebut by holding up a sign. You got ahead of me. Okay. Candidates providing rebuttals will have 1 minute of time each, and they only address the current question. Any questions so far? Okay. Once all the candidates have been asked one question, and once we've gone through all the candidates, then they will be asked the same final question and will have an equal amount of time to answer. Okay. After this is all done, the remaining 45 minutes of tonight's time will be dedicated to the village presidential candidates. Additional information about that we'll give later. Okay, so I think without further ado, yeah?
At the end, you said we'll have one question and we'll all answer it, and you said they'll be given an equal amount of time. That's specifically.
2 minutes.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
I'm
Yeah, yeah, Chris is the timekeeper.
Chris.
Yeah, I will hold up a sign when you have a minute left, and then I'll change it to 30 seconds.
The sign's making me nervous, by
That's why you put them right in front of you.
the way.
Okay, so any other questions? Don't, we're all nervous. None of us get paid for any of this.
What?
So, anyway, okay, so I'm gonna turn over to Alyssa?
Yes.
Yes.
I do need the microphone. Are you hearing okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I want to make sure because all the candidates could hear okay. So we are going to start with the trustees. I'm going to pull a name from the hat. And the first question is going to Ed Moore. Ed, you get the first question for 2 minutes. And the question you are getting is, let's see, I will tell you, 25. David, number 25. Okay. So the question, Ed, is what is your philosophy on shared services with our surrounding towns?
Okay, I think shared
I was
services.
here to take the.
Oh, microphone.
Start the clock.
Start.
Okay.
Forgot that.
Okay. Shared services are key to the survival of our town. Let's put it pretty simply. If we're going to maintain our expense base, we can provide better services and more efficient services. We have to go that way. But the important thing to remember, these services have to be equal for all of us. So we get the services we need in our community. I've worked on a project in town here called Two Towns for All Ages. It's a shared enterprise between Maplewood and South Orange. South Orange got a grant to provide services or opportunities for senior citizens, but the foundation said, oh, you guys are too small, you need more people. So we went to Maplewood, and they said, great, let's do it together. Hence the name Two Towns for All Ages. It's been very successful, I think. I've gotten to know all the people from Maplewood, the mayor, the people on their council. I think we have a really good working relationship. The senior communities initially were a little shy, I'll say, but they sort of warmed up to each other. Now we're sharing facilities. We use the Heart Center for classes. They come here to the Baird and take classes there. So that's an example of shared services that we've already have in place, which people don't know about, but it's worked very well for the community. So I'm a big supporter of shared services. Thank you.
Okay, now, candidates, if you'd like. Okay.
I got the
Yeah,
idea right
okay, pass the
away.
microphone down. Sorry, we only have one microphone. Oh, okay.
So, hi, everyone. Thank you all for having us here. Shared services is definitely the way to go. Things are slowly going up in price. It's not likely that they're going to go down. So shared services between the police departments, the fire departments, is definitely something that we have to consider and investigate, to the point where we should probably include Short Hills, Milburn, Maplewood, South Orange, West Orange, and maybe some other neighboring communities to investigate that further and make that a much broader scope than what we're considering with just Maplewood and South Orange.
Anybody else?
Point of clarification, I'll start the clock. This is, you can rebut the rebuttal, I'm just asking.
You have a,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
yes, that's three. Yeah, you have 3 chances.
I just.
You don't get it.
Yeah, you don't get
You don't have to,
I can't
you don't have to
rebut
rebut
myself?
yourself. You don't get to rebut yourself,
Just
okay.
noticed something.
So, can you pass the mic down? Sorry. We're just gonna be passing mics all night.
Trying to just leave it. Oh, you have this.
I sadly can't get out of my spot, or I would.
Okay, so the second question is for Summer Jones.
Oh, see, I had it. I had the mic button.
See, I know, but sadly I gotta talk. It's gonna go back to you. And the question is, it is number 23, David. Explain your personal vision for the downtown area, including Valley Street.
Hi. So as a person that went to St. Hall years ago, and the only thing I had was a Blockbuster and a Carvel, and a person that came back 3.5 years ago, my personal vision would be for it to be a walkable town, for there to be more businesses, not just restaurants and hair salons, but I'm very much into books, so bookstores and hardware stores and places. What I'm seeing now is where there are children hanging out a lot, places for kids to go. There's a lot of kids in this town. It'd be nice to have an actual activity place for them, maybe a skate park so I would love for it to be walking, like a walking town. Along Valley, I want to thank Academy Heights for the tour. I didn't realize the amount of businesses that are vacant. And so I would love to fill those businesses with something. What that is, I'm not sure. As Board of Trustees, I would want to hear from everyone that lives on Academy Heights, because I know it's very important. See, I got nervous when you flipped that to 1 minute. So I would love to know what everybody wants to hear. The one thing, just being a trustee running, is when you meet different people in neighborhoods that you don't necessarily go to, everyone has their own vision of what they want to see. So the one thing that we want to do as a trustee is try to figure out what everybody is looking for and how to make everyone happy, because it is hard to make everyone in town happy. So my personal vision would be for more businesses. I would love to try to figure out a way to bring down taxes by having more businesses that would actually add to the decrease in taxes. So that's one of my major visions.
Okay, so Toshi, you can go first.
So my team has talked about this a lot, and I'd say my personal vision is very much like Evanston, Illinois. I don't know if you guys know of Evanston or are aware of it, but the demographics here and the demographics in Evanston are very similar. So we can have a robust, walkable town. It's important that we look at all the spaces that are available to us that make it that way. One of the things that we don't have is stickiness to our downtown. What public spaces can we take advantage of to create stickiness? If we looked at our library and created a space like they did you didn't even give me the 1 minute time. I'm at the 30-second time.
Mine is very scary.
What is a minute? Okay, I'm talking faster. I grew up in Jersey. Okay. So, specifically, I would want to make sure a lot of the burden of development is going to be in this area. So we have to have the engagement of the neighbors here. It's important that we actually have a plan for what is going to be zoned in this area so that it's not haphazard and one-off. So I would say what's important to me is a plan, that we engage public spaces in a way that they create stickiness so that the downtown actually, that our current businesses have people to go to them, and that we have appropriate ratables.
I'm gonna put that on me. Okay. So, Bob, anyone else?
Ready, set, go. Okay, I also want to thank the Academy Heights Association for having all of us here tonight, the village president candidates. So I spent the last 5.5 years, some of you may know, as the executive director of the South Orange Village Center Alliance. And as executive director, I helped spearhead 28 new small businesses that are mostly owned by South Orange residents in our downtown. And at some point, about 3 years ago, we actually expanded our purview of our boundaries of the alliance to go down to about where Zen Pets is. I would like to, if I'm on the board of trustees, and so privileged to be voted onto the board of trustees by all of you, I would like to take my experience in bringing all those new small businesses that we were successful in bringing to South Orange Avenue to Valley Street, in addition to Irvington Avenue, because those are both two commercial corridors that need some love and need some attention. And that would be a primary focus of mine if I'm on the board, to not only work with the SOVCA that I used to run, but to work with merchant groups in both commercial corridors.
Anyone else? Nope. Okay. Next question. Turn over your.
Okay. The next question goes to Bobby Brown, and it is number 16, David. As development continues along Valley Street with more retail space, what can be done to mitigate parking that spills into surrounding neighborhoods?
I think it also goes back to the plan.
Mike, you can, let's just wait for the mic. I won't start until you get the mic, just because it's being broadcast, and so you can.
Go.
Go.
It's okay.
I think it also goes back to a plan, as Toshi, who I'm lucky enough to be running with the same slate, talked about. You have to have a plan first. In terms of parking, we all have complained about it, but parking also allows us to have some income. So if you have a plan that makes sense, and one that you're sticking to and you abide to, and one that considers not only the immediate mentions that you have on Facebook, but one that is considerate of what the next 5-10 years look like. It should include parking. I think what we haven't done with some of the ad hoc projects is considered parking. Let me read it. It's a long question. Down the street with more retail space. We've done parking. Being creative in how we're zoning, making sure that each developer, when they come in with a plan, has afforded that space and that lot with enough space for parking. Again, making sure that the parking that we do have when we are allowing developers to come in, that we are not squandering that parking. In terms of creativity, I don't know how creative you can be, but with some of the developers, we've been creative with how we tax or we don't tax them. We allow them certain abatements or pilots. We should also be creative in what they do with that space, whether it be parking in the development itself, whether it be parking that is exposed externally above the building, whatever the case might be. I think if you're going to have developers, you're going to attract the top developers. You don't have to do it by just allowing them to avoid paying taxes. You can do it by also finding the best developers that do that in their plans, that afford for good parking opportunities.
We'll go start down there and then go down this way. Have some idea.
So our team has also had a lot of discussion about this, and I think that having the developers be responsible for building a parking deck, flat out, that's what I'm going to say. So the parking deck could probably fit somewhere around the SOPAC area, but a current developer in our town should be responsible for bringing something to the community other than just its building, just its parking. I do like the idea of a parking concept behind the building that they're building that is transit parking, citizen parking, and tenant parking, as well as having them do some community project within the community.
Oh, no. From a parking perspective, parking is a serious problem in town, but one of the other issues that I'm finding just in speaking to people and having friends that commute is the fact that you might not be aware of where all the parking spaces are. What's nice is there are parking signs, but if there was a detailed map that maybe might be sent to people to know where parking is, communicate it a little bit better. I also have a friend that has been on the Jitney wait list for, she told me 5 years. I don't really know if that date is real, but because sometimes people are like, oh, it's been 5 years, and it might have been 2. But she has been on the Jitney wait list for a number of years. So I would also look at the Jitney schedules and to see if they're full in the mornings, to see if there's a better way to get people from their homes to the downtown area so that they don't have to drive and park. Thank you.
Bobby, go back down to Bobby.
Do I have to use one of these? Yeah, that's my question.
Oh, wait, what's your question?
You keep your popsicle stick.
No, you can't rebut your own question.
Oh, you can't rebut.
You can't rebut your own question.
I had like 29 seconds to use the rest of the 20.
No, sorry. Tough world. I know, you tried.
The educator in me is like, good try, but no. So,
I thought these were just rebuts.
those are just rebuttals.
They're just rebuts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question. Okay. So the name is Matthew Wonsky. Sorry. I have a Matt. So and the question is, I'm going to open it first. It's the nails, David. Number 13. What are your thoughts on building private student housing?
Thank you all for coming out. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Colrena, for hosting. Thank you, David and the Academy Heights Association. Student housing is great. My entire life, I grew up on Warren Court, and then my parents moved up to Spear, but the majority of my life I was spent in Warren Court, now in Irvington Ave. There's a strange disconnect between the town and Seton Hall University for a number of reasons. We've worked on the SOVCA together to try to get that bond closer in any way that we possibly could. So student housing downtown, I think, is a great idea, but we need to make sure that we put provisions in for student housing to make sure that Seton Hall can't acquire the property. The biggest problem we have now is tax burden. The only way we can stabilize taxes is make sure that we have ratables. If Seton Hall is able to acquire those properties, that's no bueno for any of us.
Does anyone want to respond to that? Okay, we can move on. Next question.
Okay, the next question goes to Donna Bollier. Did I say that right?
You did.
Good. And the question is number 12. What are your thoughts on improving relations between Seton Hall renters and neighbors? Got one sort of similar.
So I've had over the course of today probably two or three conversations about Seton Hall and whether we're a university town or whether we're a town that happens to have a university in it. One was with Deirdre Yates, who's a dean over at Seton Hall, and we were talking about this very topic. How do we essentially knit together our student community with our community at large a little bit better and make people more comfortable with each other? There's a new president coming in to Seton Hall, everybody probably knows, that's very keyed in on looking for ways to get more integrated with the community, and so we'll be able to develop relationships there and make sure that we're up front and center in welcoming that new president to the town. But we also want to think about renters in terms of how they impact the immediate community, right? And so there's a couple ways that happens. One might be that renters just go in and rent a house, and there's 5 or 6 in there, and it becomes something like the Animal House, for those of you that are old enough to remember that old movie, which I am. And that's not great. It's a party, it's potentially a party atmosphere, and it just needs, that's not what anybody wants to have for their neighbor when they might be going to bed at 9 o'clock at night to do a commute in the morning. So those kinds of things are harder to control, where the rent laws provide for that. And the key would be to zone in on that with the local police and to make sure that things like that are happening in the neighborhood, and to be discouraging that and reaching out to those people that live there and let them know what does and doesn't work for the neighborhood. The other part, though, is what about some of these bigger buildings that are keyed into managing an environment for students specifically? And yes, those do work, and sometimes they work better because they're actually companies that are professionally managing students for a living, and they know how to make those situations work. And so that would certainly be something that could work for students on a broader basis.
Sorry. Okay, Bobby.
I was itching to use my rebuttal. Tell me when to start. I know, you're perfect. In terms of relationship with renters versus residents, I think we're thinking of it that way, renters versus residents instead of renters and residents. We're both. We're a town that has a great university here, and we should embrace that. Those relationships, I think, are unfortunately been left on the shelf. They have been left on the shelf. We need to be very meaningful and strategic with how we build those relationships. Toshi talked about a public library. That's a great way to bring Seton Hall students into our residency and into our community and be a part of what we do. We talked about parking and what we're going to do with parking. It should be a walkable town. Or why don't we use the Seton Hall jitney that they use for 24/7? Why don't we come up with some relationship, some agreement, partnership where we can be on a jitney with students instead of it just stopping at a certain time. I commute from New York, it's tough. And I see the Seton Hall student, they have a jitney waiting on them. When I get home really, really late, I don't. I'd love to sit next to a student and talk about, hey, when I was at Notre Dame, I majored in this, and they might have the same major. We have to actually reach out and create a relationship with Seton Hall. It's not us versus them, it's both. We are together.
My last one.
Sorry, early on.
Oh, you went
I
early.
get it in here. Okay, Donna actually touched on it about having the relations between the renters and the neighbors. So I live on a street that has at least 3 houses that are student occupied. And the way that I start out the year is I go over to them right before the football game starts on Sunday, and I knock on their door with a couple of other neighbors, maybe bring some brownies, and we sit down and we say, listen, we live in this community together, and we want you to know that we're here to support you. How can we support you? And they tell us what their needs are. We tell them what our needs are, and they have a party, and I say, okay, are you gonna get up the next morning at 7 a.m. and pick up all those red cups that are all over my street? Yes, they say, and I go, good. And I said, and can you take care of the party? Yes, they say, or no, they don't say. And I say, okay, so if it gets rowdy, do you want me to call the police, or do you want to call the police? And it works.
Anyone else? Nope.
Okay, the next question goes to Bob Zuckerman. And your question is number 24. Briefly explain your philosophy as it relates to new development versus repurposing and preservation.
Thanks for the question. I think both are critical, and I'll tell you why. I think new development, if it's done the right way, as some of the recent projects have been, is very important, because right now residents bear 90%, residential property owners bear 90% of the property tax burden in this town. That's way high, and we need to do something about that. So if we're gonna help stabilize our taxes, which for all of us who are residential property owners, you know are high, right? That's a fact, they are high in this town. We need to support smart new development, mixed-use development in our commercial corridors, not in our residential neighborhoods, but South Orange Avenue, Valley Street, Irvington, and thereabouts. So that's critically important. But we also need to preserve our history, which is why I was fully supportive of the Board of Trustees and the village president's agreement or decision to sell Village Hall to Landmark Hospitality, which is going to turn into a fabulous new restaurant, beer garden, and catering facility, which is really going to be an anchor for our downtown in a way that few places could be, but also save the taxpayers $7 million of renovation funds, and additionally have Landmark Hospitality restore Village Hall to its 1890 luster, which is going to be remarkable, because right now it doesn't look so good, right? So we have to look at preservation issues very, very carefully. We have a historic train station, we have other historic properties in our town, and we need to be able to blend in. That's why we have a design review board now and a development committee, which can help blend in the new development to make sure that aesthetically it fits in with the historic nature of our town, provide the benefits that new development brings, walking wallets, and what have you, and preserve our history as well. Thank you.
We'll go down that way. Yep.
Okay, so our team, in terms of new development down in the Academy Heights section, there's a lot of history in Academy Heights, as you all know. Academy Heights was one of the first sections of town to be developed. Founders Park that you guys formed your conservancy for and take care of and maintain it. These are all things that need to be taken into consideration during development. We're very aware of that, and we want to make sure that any historic buildings and existing structures that can be repurposed are repurposed and used properly. New developments are necessary to add ratables and to make sure that they're higher and add to the tax burden, but existing structures with nothing wrong, we don't see any reason that they need to be changed.
Hi, so, and I've got 1 minute. So my philosophy as it pertains to development would be, development needs to be respectful of existing architecture and in line. There's many modern buildings that are in line and respectful of that. I think one thing that's missing in the discussion is one way to value and preserve our housing stock is to actually make it easy for the residents to take care of their homes. So we need to simplify and work with the town to simplify the permit process when people want to upkeep their homes. We need to work with seniors and bring in programs and make sure they have access to programs to help keep up their homes. So part of preservation isn't just looking for the large buildings that need to be preserved. It's making sure that our neighbors have a way to preserve their homes. Finally, when we look at development and we hold people accountable to keeping with the character of the town, they can become creative and make sure that we have the ratables that we need in there. So I think it's preserving some old structures as we can and repurposing them. It's having development that's in keeping with the architecture, and it's making sure that people have better permit processes.
Anyone else?
We're down to our final two people, and then you all get the last question at the end. So Stacy,
Yep.
you're next.
I'm ready.
You ready? Okay. Going in the bottom. Number 1. I know you weren't ready for that one. Do you feel historic guidelines and regulations for development are important for the town, and would you favor new ordinances that would establish ordinances and establishment of new districts that would limit exterior treatments? So that's a long question. I'll read that one again. Do you feel historic guidelines and regulations for development are important for the town, and would you favor new ordinances and the establishment of new districts that would limit exterior treatments?
That sounds like an answer for Silica.
Just say no.
Question for Silica. Okay.
I don't know how to answer that, honestly. Historic guidelines and regulations for development. I would love to have that in there, but the developer can kind of get away with what they want. You know, we can give them the guidelines, we can tell them what to do, but ultimately it's up to them. And then the other part is to favor new ordinances, which is the establishment of new districts. New districts.
Historic districts. More districts?
It says new districts.
New
Oh,
historic.
new historic districts.
Well, we have historic districts in town now, so.
Yeah. I don't, honestly, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that. I would do the best I can to keep the traditions of South Orange there. I would like to see the buildings be older and be new, clean, updated, green buildings. And I would do the best I could to establish ordinances to do that, but I don't know if it'll actually happen. Sorry.
Does anyone want to, okay. Let's just go down.
Bobby, go ahead.
Bobby, you go first.
I think that the last few questions have been sort of byproduct of how things seem to be done in an ad hoc nature. These questions could be answered if we all agreed upon the master plan process has taken a while, but we should let the process take its course, and we should agree that this is what our town is going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Every time that a developer comes or someone comes with some plans, if that then turns into the powers that be making a decision at that moment based on something that's short-sighted, we're going to keep having the same conversations. And instead, if we're strategic and we say that all development and the preservation of historic sections of our South Orange is a part of a master plan that is inclusive, that everyone should be included in that, not just Academy Heights. Although Academy Heights is very important, Academy Heights in all parts of South Orange should agree based on a plan. This is what we're going to do. And when a developer comes with, I don't care how shiny the plan is, when a developer comes with some plans that don't meet that master plan, we say no as a town.
I'm gonna actually say that Bobby stole my answer. Thank you. So I am on the I'm on the management team for the master plan, and I definitely agree that the master plan is the way to go in ensuring that whoever we bring in from a developer standpoint follows the guidelines that we as a town set forth. It was really great that there is a master plan that people are allowed to come and give and voice their opinions of what they want their town to look like. So anyone that took part in it has had a say of what they want, and so we definitely need to standardize on a process and make sure that things are put into place that we tell the developers what they want versus what the developers think that they can tell us, because it is our town and we pay taxes here, we all own homes here, and so we want to make sure that we keep that.
Master plan, master plan, master plan.
You should put a rebuttal over.
Can I rebut? Okay, great.
I don't know if they're coming back. He's coming back.
Okay, so I just wanted to say, I just wanted to correct the record a bit from my friend Stacy sitting on the other side. Developers can't right now just come in and build whatever they want and however, and make it look like however they want it to look. And the reason for that is most of them, or almost all of them, need a redevelopment agreement. And in the redevelopment agreement, the Board of Trustees can actually dictate not only how tall a building is, how dense it is, but also what kind of materials they need to use. So a perfect example of that is this group right here. The Academy Heights Association worked tirelessly with the board and the development committee on the Fourth and Valley project. When it was first introduced, it was a behemoth. It was too large. It was all over the place. And thanks to the hard work of this association that's hosting this event, it turned out to be a plan that looks great, that's going to be, when it's built, going to be a tremendous amenity for Academy Heights and for the entire town of South Orange. So there are checks in place for that.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, then Toshi, you are last. You are
Not least.
But not least, by any means. Number 2, David? I know, look at me. What is your stance on the effects of pilots on the school budget?
Okay. So I think there are people in this room that know I'm pretty passionate about our school district and how much we need to invest in our children. I think there's opportunities with pilots, but I think we need to use them sparingly if we can. I do not want to see, look, developers can come in and make money without us giving away the farm and then having them not be ratables for a long time. So I think if I get the opportunity to be a part of the Board of Trustees, looking at pilots, making sure that we have, not just looking even at pilots, but making sure that we have a real plan to get ratables in town so that we have more money both to spend on our towns and our children is important. So my stance is that pilots are not particularly helpful, not the way they've been used in New Jersey. They can be. There are areas of redevelopment where you can see just attracting people to and start all over. But right now in our town, I do not think they're particularly helpful.
Anyone want to rebut?
So that's the last
This
question.
is the last question, so I mean, Matt, you had your first, and then.
Okay, so this may come as a surprise to you. Pilots can be used in very effective ways. The great thing about pilots is we have complete control of what the deal is on the pilot. So we can tell the developer, okay, you're not going to pay, you're going to pay 0, you're going to pay 30, you're going to pay 40, you're going to pay 60, you're going to pay 80. In terms of taking finance away from the schools, the great thing about it is that Maplewood and South Orange can come together and make a decision if there's money left over at the end of the year to still give money back to the schools. I think we're a destination town. I think developers want to come here, and we have a train line, we have a vibrant community, we have a diverse community, we have many businesses that have been here for many years. It's a town that people want to be in. Are they necessary in every situation? No, but they can be useful, and I think the proper use of them should be looked at and considered.
Anyone? Okay, so
We'll
we'll go with you, and then we'll go down.
Okay. I do support the use of pilots in redevelopment agreements, not exclusively, not necessarily in every case, but I think many new developments may require a pilot, or the developers require the pilot to be able to build the development. And why I support it is Rutgers University just came out earlier this year, or maybe it was late last year, I believe it was the Blaustein School, with a study that showed how few school-aged children actually live in most mixed-use buildings like the type that we see here in a transit-oriented development like South Orange. So the fact that, yes, they're paying less taxes for a fixed period of time than they would if they were paying normal taxes, but it incentivizes them to develop so that we have a greater range of housing stock for our seniors, for younger couples and younger folks who want to try out South Orange before they buy that home. And it doesn't really overburden the school system and provides much needed resources and funding for our town so that we can stabilize our taxes.
Anyone else? Okay, Bobby, do you want to?
And Bob's right. A lot of the students don't live there, but I think that we have seen throughout how many ever years you've lived here, we all share the burden of a better South Orange. Simple and plain, a smarter South Orange. Having our students have that investment in those schools is important, and it should be important. I think pilots can be useful. I think, unfortunately, not only here, but throughout New Jersey, they've been used as these leverage points that right now we don't seem to be on the right side of that leverage. And that's why I think being devoted, committed, and absolutely entrenched in a master plan that is inclusive, that we all are a part of, and that we are committed to, will change that leverage. And the developer, while they may want to have it in a redevelopment agreement, we essentially can take our power back, and we need to. And I think as a town, South Orange, we have to do that. And pilots can be good, but we have to make sure that ratables into the 5, 10, 20-year future, looking with a strategic plan based on that master plan agreement that we all are a part of, says we need ratables.
This is our final question. So we will have 2 minutes. Every candidate will get 2 minutes. We will start with, we'll just go down the line. I'll pass it, actually. We're gonna, it's number 6, David.
Okay. So this is the final question for all trustee candidates. What is your sense of purpose and or inspiration to run for this position? So we'll start with you. We'll go down that way.
So starting with Stacy?
Yep, we'll go alphabetical
Okay.
order. Starting with Stacy. Pass it down. It is, what is your sense of purpose or inspiration to run for this position?
I have been a volunteer all my life. I have volunteered for Stacy Electric and been employed by Stacy Electric, been a partner of the business with my husband Dennis. I have volunteered for all of the school PTAs, Home and School Association, Domestic Violence Response Team, Community Response Team, YMCA, and Rotary. And in all of that, every single thing, what I had to bring to those organizations was integrity and accountability. And the YMCA, I've been on that board for 30 years, has been my most successful piece of bringing it from a very small little organization to something huge in the state of New Jersey. It is the largest YMCA. The Metro YMCA of the Orange is the largest YMCA. We now have 7 branches throughout Essex, Sussex, Morris, and even Bergen County. And we, here in South Orange, we are the largest child care facility in, I think, this area. I think it's in the state also, but it's unbelievable. And when this community changes and they need something, the YMCA is there to cover it. So what I bring to the township is that ability to bring integrity and bring accountability to everything that we do here in South Orange and in South Orange.
My sense of purpose is an 8-year-old named Bray and a 6-year-old named Thatcher. Those are my 2 sons. They're in the school system, and we've had issues and thought about taking them out of the school system until A, my wife, showed me what it was going to cost us, and B, you look in the mirror and you say, what kind of solution is that? I can't run from this. I've got to be a part of the answer. My mother was a school teacher for 41 years in the Broward County school system. I would walk through a mall, and I was fortunate enough to be very notable in the sense that I played football and at every level, and I thought I was kind of a big deal. I would walk through a mall, anytime I was home for Christmas break, and never failed. An adult would walk up to my mother, and she taught 6th grade remedial reading. The students that everyone gave up on would walk up to my mother with their own kids and say, Miss Brown, you changed my life because you believed in me. So my kids are going to stay here in the public schools, right? And I looked at the force report, and it showed that 5 of the 14 teenagers that was subject to use of force were 14-year-olds. And then I looked at my 8-year-old again and said, he's going to be there pretty soon. The doctor says he's going to be really big, and he happens to be black. And I said, I've got to do something about that. In terms of what are we going to do with public safety? Recreation, I look at our fields, I look at the opportunities, the fact that the Packers don't exist anymore. I've been teaching my son how to be a quarterback since 2. And now I got to take him over to East Orange and play. We've got to do better, and I think it all brings it together. I do this for John and Scott. Those are my 2 white neighbors. When we had a conversation about the force report, they were just as upset. They said, how are we going to be progressive if this doesn't mean something to me? And so, as a town, if we're going to wave this flag of diversity and inclusiveness, we have to do it. We can't just say it, we have to do it. And so that's my purpose. I'm going to run till May 14th and hopefully get some votes and hopefully be a board of trustee member.
So I think everyone has had things to say about details of running our town that are true. We do need to have a master plan that gives us guidance and development. We do need to, we do need to keep an eye out on how buildings are looking as they're going up. We do need to have better connections in order to solve some of our diversity questions and issues. My background is 30 years in accounting and finance and strategy, and I helped my clients negotiate all kinds of deals. And so that might be something like an alliance that we need to work out with another town. That might be something like persuading a developer to do something the way we want it done, as opposed to the way they might have done it 6 towns over. That might be something like helping members of the community that are different to connect with each other and negotiate their differences and understand better how to appreciate each other for their differences. And so if I think about one superpower, it's that finance and accounting and helping people get negotiations done, because we will never be able to have a master plan that gets down to the nth detail that says exactly how the next building needs to go up. We will always need to be negotiating. And then finally, that's kind of another superpower is I'm a people connector. I put people together. I help people meet the people that they need to know in order to advance whatever their goals are professionally or whatever their goals are personally. And I feel like I can do that for this town as well. That's why I'm running for trustee.
Thank you. So, Bobby and I often align on a lot of things, but I think I one-upped him because I brought my inspiration here today. He's in the back. My inspiration is running as my son as well, right? For me, this is my second tour of duty in South Orange. I graduated from Columbia High School, and I cannot put my son in Columbia High School. I want to be a part of the solution. I want to be a part of, when I was involved in the school district and involved in the PTA, I really threw myself into it because I wanted to make it better, not just for him, but for all the kids. And that was the kind of the perspective I had. I'm throwing myself into the South Orange race. My second tour of duty, I've been here for 16 years. And in the 16 years that I've been here on my block, I've watched my block turn over, and I've watched one by one my elderly residents have to kind of give up their homes. They didn't, some went joyfully, right? Their little $200,000 homes were now worth $700,000. Good luck, kid, with the taxes, I'm out. But some really wanted to stay. And our town isn't perfect for that. And the woman who has cared for my son since he was 3 months old is making that choice now too. It's my community. My inspiration is, it's my community, it's my child. I want to leverage the skills that I have. I mean, I think some of you have seen our bios. My undergraduate's Penn, my graduate's Northwestern, I have an MBA. My whole career has been in finance. I've switched from my profession from commercial to nonprofit. I'm the CFO of an educational organization because I care. So that switch was a personal choice to want my life to be about more. And right now I want it to be about helping this community move forward, making solutions. If any of you talk to friends or talk to how I worked within the school district, it was about bringing people together to come up with solutions. It wasn't about arguing. It wasn't about throwing popcorn from the cheap seats. It was about trying to figure things out and get it done. So if you want to know my inspiration and who I am, like I said, my inspiration is right there. And my commitment is I've come back here on purpose and stayed. So this is where I live and want to live. Thank you.
So when I decided to run for office, I had to weigh out some things. And the reason why I decided is because you have to, like Toshi said, you have to be part of the solution. And so a lot of people can sit back and complain, but if you're not actually helping and saying, well, what can I use as far as my skill set, then there's a problem. And from a technology perspective, and I tell people this all the time, the technology in this town, while good, I'm going to say that, it's good, it could be better. And so some of those things is what frustrated me. And I said, okay, with my tech skills and my ability to work with people and my customer service skills, I can really try to figure out a way to better communicate issues in town. Currently, I get very frustrated trying to find things, trying to figure out where to go for things, because there's different areas for people to go to. And so that's been my frustration. But as a that's not me. As a person that has worked at a university for a number of years, the one thing that I've always focused on is customer service and making sure that I actually listen to people and know what they want. And I'm very good at it. And I feel like I can put solutions in place. And I grew up, and I tell people this all the time, I grew up in a restaurant business. And in a restaurant business, you know, it's all about balance and listening to people, figuring out what you want, and moving quickly to get it done well. You know, not burnt eggs or anything, but actually working to get it done well. So I definitely want to use my technology skills to make sure that we can work on communication, that we can work on the website, that we can work on portals where we can make bill payments, and etc. So those are the things that actually inspired me to do that. And I have the time, I have the dedication, I'm a leader, and I like to work as part of a team.
Hi, I'm Ed Moore. I've lived here about 9 years. My wife, and we also have 2 grown children who live in town and 4 grandchildren. So I have kids in the 1st and 2nd grade. I have adult children most of the time, and my wife of over 50 years. So I have some commitment to the community on all levels. I can sit down with a senior citizen and listen to them and find out what their issues are. I can talk to a 2nd grade and find out what's going on in the 2nd grade. I've worked in business. I worked in banking, primarily in the human resources area. I also worked at some nonprofit work for a couple of women's health organizations. I've done a lot of volunteer work in the community here, especially with the West Montrose Neighborhood Association. Our big push has been Scotland Road. I think we're pretty close to having it fixed, right, Sheena? And so this has been like a 6 or 7 year, saga. Municipal government is different than working in business, okay? So you have to accept that fact when you walk in. I've been working on the outside of it. I've gotten some things done. I just felt maybe if I go inside, I can do a better job. That's kind of my motivation.
Okay, my inspiration to run is multifold. I'm a lifelong resident of South Orange, born and raised here, grew up in Warren Court. My parents moved to Spear. I just bought a condo in Irvington Ave. As you know, my family owns the Town Hall Deli. It's been in town 93 years. We're the oldest business in town. In having the oldest business in town, there are a lot of people that have moved out of town and come back to visit this town, whether it be for Town Hall Deli, whether it be to sightsee, whether it be to have a reunion at Columbia High School. But one thing everyone can say about this town, I think, in this room, is that it's a great place to live and everyone wants to come back to it. There are very few places in the world that people say, you know what, I really feel a sense of purpose there, I want to move back. Being a part of this community and having the relationships I've been able to build in the town have really inspired my run. I think there's a lot of things that we can do to help push South Orange forward. I had to throw a little plug in there for you, sorry. Most importantly, my parents have made the decision to move out of town. And they raised me here, they chose this community to raise me here. Neither of them grew up in this town. My mom's from New York, my dad's from Bergen County. And I'm so very fortunate that they chose this community to have myself to be born and raised in this town. And they're moving out because of the taxes. Now, if I sit here and tell you we're going to lower taxes, that's just a bold-faced lie. But if I can do something to control it, my experience in Town Hall Deli, being around for 93 years is no easy task. I only had something to do with it for 7 or 8 years, actually running it myself. But these are things that need to be considered when you're looking at what candidate you think you're going to vote for. I ask for your vote on May 14th, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. So, what inspired me to run for this position is, well, as I said earlier, I spent the last 6 years living here, 5.5 years running the South Orange Village Center Alliance and bringing new businesses to our downtown, improving the streetscape, bringing new murals and new artwork, making Spiota Park better, all of those things. But I want to take my experience there and throughout my career and bring it to a larger stage and serve more people in a different way. And so that's what inspired me to leave my position at SOFCA and actually run for the Board of Trustees, because I think I can make even more of a difference on the board. There are a couple other things that inspired me. Another inspiration couldn't be with us tonight. He's actually home, but that's my husband, my life partner, Grant Newman. I'm aware that if I do get elected, I would be the first openly LGBT person ever to serve on the Board of Trustees here in South Orange. And as we all know, this is an extremely diverse community, a very progressive community, and a community that's very welcoming. And my feeling is that the board, our governing body, should really look like and represent what South Orange is all about. I got an email today, just real quickly, from a committeeman. He's actually a town council person in Rochelle Park in Bergen County. And he was complaining to a number of candidates who are running because he got called 3 times by the planning board head, the head of the planning board, an F slur word for gay people. Okay, this is in Bergen County, just half an hour from here. I want to use my experience on the Board of Trustees to tell all the LGBT kids that are growing up in South Orange and all the kids who feel different or who may look different, that they too can rise above it and serve their community one day. And I want to be that inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all the candidates, for taking the time to be a part of this. And we will quickly sort of transition to the village president. But we're gonna ask you guys that are here to stay if you want, and you guys are more than welcome to stay. Those seats over there that have the reserves stuff are for you. There is water back there where you can take a minute to get water. As we transition. Time for everybody. David?
Sure. We did turn the air conditioner on? Okay. Okay, so for this portion of the evening, both candidates will have 2 minutes each to respond to every question asked. I'll hold the questions up again. Questions will once again be chosen at random from the pool of questions submitted to the Academy Heights Neighborhood Association. Please note that it is possible for questions asked previously of trustee candidates to be chosen again. And the candidate who will lead off with the first answer will be determined now by a coin toss. Does anybody know how to toss a coin?
She has already called heads. Okay, so that means, Sheena, you can choose if you want to go first or you want to go second.
I'll go second. I just have a question on the rebuttals. Like I saw that the other group had.
You don't have to do that. You don't have that.
So it's just 2 minutes on.
2 minutes each. 2 minutes each. We don't have to. You don't get a little. You don't get one of my nice little.
No, I'm so sorry. I can give you one if you really want it. I know. I worked hard on those. But no, you don't get one. Okay, you're going to start with Sheena. You will get the first question out of the hat. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. That was my fault.
Melissa, do we get a mic also?
You will get my mic as soon as I am done talking. We have one. Okay, so we are starting with Deborah Davis Ford. She gets question number 2. Now, some of these questions you may have heard before because we have some questions that we are used for the village trustees that we are also asking for the village president, and then there are some that are just village president questions. So question number 2, what is your stance on the effect of pilots on the school budget?
Hi, I'm Deborah Davis Ford, and I want to thank Academy Heights for hosting this forum. My stance on the pilots with how it affects schools, I just want to explain for those who may not understand that the formula for pilots is that 95% of the money collected in lieu of taxes goes directly to the municipality, and 5% goes to the county. The way that difference is your regular tax bill, 57% of the taxes go to the school to fund the schools, 27% goes to the municipalities, and 16% goes to the county. So you can see the significant difference on pilots as it regards to schools. None of that pilot money goes to the schools. So it depends on the pilot and how the occupancy of that project affects the burden on the school. What I mean simply is that if a project or mixed-use project that is mostly apartments or condos, if there are minimal amount of students who attend that school, then there's a minimum amount of burden on the school system. There's no additional cost or minimal cost. But if it's the type of pilot where there are a significant amount of students, then that is concerning. I think that there would be an opportunity in that instance if you had an opportunity for an area to be built and their schools, that you negotiate with the developer that a certain percentage of that fund, if there's an impact on the school, will be given to the public schools, because strong and vibrant and successful schools are important to the community, not only for protecting the values of the property, but also for the quality of life and just doing the right thing.
Sheena, you have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you, Academy Heights Neighborhood Association. Sheena Collum, candidate for village president. Yes, I support pilots. During my term in office, there has not been one pilot that is not significantly advantageous to the taxpayers of this town. If you are seeing delays on projects, it is primarily because we get caught up on finance. Prior to me being on the board, there was nobody running pro formas. What pro formas mean are essentially is we get a development breakdown of hard costs, soft costs. There's probably about 10,000 cells. We look at internal rates of return. We project out at 5, 10, 15, 20 years. How long a developer is going to hold a property before they look to sell. In South Orange, when we talk about the number of school-age children, it's 1 school-age child for every 38 units built. Fact. Bob Zuckerman had referenced previously, it was the Rutgers University Real Estate Division put out the latest report that showed, technically speaking, that in transit-oriented development towns, much like South Orange, the number is actually even less than that, primarily because it's more affordable to actually purchase a house than it is to rent in this village. So let's go over the pilots that I had. First, Orange Lawn Tennis Club, when it was going to be developed, they were looking for a pilot. That was rejected. You don't need pilots for townhomes that are going to be $850,000. Ultimately, that was downzoned. Village Hall, it absolutely needed a pilot. It was a 25-year pilot. It came down from 30. It was at 25. The reason being is that they were saving taxpayers a little bit more than $7 million, closer to $8 million, investing $6 million into the property. The project that I worked on with Academy Heights Neighborhood Association, 4th and Valley, that's a 5-year pilot. That is covered under local housing and redevelopment law. It is a short-term tax abatement. The ones that I'm negotiating for the Lustbader property were the vacancy is for the blockbuster spot. Not only is that a staggered pilot that goes from 10 to 12 to 15%, but it's going to yield multi-million dollars in new revenue to the village. It was the first offsite community contribution that would be going to structured parking and also our library, in addition to co-retailing space that amounts to about $5 million in value over the term of the pilot.
Okay. Next question.
Okay, next question. Okay, number 25. Okay, so then we will start with Sheena this time. What is your philosophy on shared services with our surrounding towns?
Fully support it. The first meeting that I had when I was elected into office under a shared platform that Trustee Davis Ford, when she previously ran with me, top priority partnerships. Number one was Maplewood. We've been discussing a lot about the fire department lately, so let me set a couple records straight. First of all, the mailer that you received from my opponent is false, and let me go through it one by one because it is the most significant shared service agreement that this town will have ever entered into. First and foremost, there will be 6 firefighters in our headquarters. That is no less than what it is today, not the claim that there will be 3, minimum of 6. That is what we have. The fire department will remain open. The number one priority of that study was to increase operational efficiencies, which means no longer do we just have 6 people responding or 7, we have the power of 2 towns. It advances not only the efficiencies, but also streamlines our training and administrative abilities. In the long term, it is going to save taxpayer money, not just because the overtime, but what we call cost avoidance. If you look at how deficient our department is right now, it is because the proper investments weren't made. That is number one. After that, I worked on a shared tax collector position, which my opponent voted against, which also significantly benefited South Orange to the tune of $100,000. And we were able to do a partnership with Maplewood. Quite frankly, I see them as our biggest allies. When I say SOMA, I say SOMA in front of MAPSO. I mean it. When I went out to go get our age-friendly grant for our senior citizens, which now is approaching over $250,000. I called Vic DeLuca first and said, you know what? We have a better chance of getting this grant if we work together, not if we work separately, and we were able to secure that grant. There's been several other instances of our shared municipal court. This is very important. We share our school district. We should equally be paying into that school district. Shared services are the future, and if you've heard me talk about this before, 565 municipalities, even more school districts, even more fire districts, is completely unsustainable. The future of us and Maplewood is together, and if not just a shared service, regionalization of services.
I have always supported shared services. My votes on many of the shared services we have are there for you to see. Let's talk about the fire department. I made the statement publicly that the initiative that was presented did not allow for governance from South Orange. It allowed for Maplewood to have total control, and it did not allow for the efficiencies of the cities that were produced. Now, having shared services is a no-brainer when we're looking for efficiencies, when we're looking for consolidation, but not at the expense of the quality of service, not at the expense of taxation without representation. The document that exists that was first prepared by Maplewood and sent to Sheena states that Maplewood would have total control, the South Orange Fire Department would be dissolved, the building would of course be there, but the firefighters would now become employees of Maplewood. I believe that we should do better. We should take our time. Not all shared services are equal. The firefighters who are here also believe in a good agreement with shared services, that's consolidation. In fact, we should do better. It should be regionalized. We should include Milburn, West Orange, Irvington, or other towns that are similar to
our shared services, that protects civil service, our unions. If we're progressive, then we need to protect our working people so they can afford to live in this community or nearby communities and serve our citizens. And regarding the tax shared services, the reason why I voted no is because I wanted a better deal, not that I was against shared services.
Okay, next question. We will be starting with you, Deborah Davis-Ward. Okay, this was a question previously, number 24. Please briefly explain your philosophy as it relates to new development versus repurposing and preservation.
I don't think it's an either or. I think it depends. It depends on the location of the development. It depends on what's needed in that area. In some areas in need that are underdeveloped or in a bad condition or blighted, that's an obvious opportunity for new development. But we're an old town with interesting architecture. Where we can preserve that and repurpose it, and the cost expense ratio and return on benefits, it makes sense. We've had so many opportunities where that has been done in town. We struggle as we try to deal with generating revenues or tax ratables and also preserving our village. I love South Orange. One of my hashtags is my beloved village. And the reason that is that in many instances we've done a good job of preserving existing structures and others we've not. There are parts of I think that when we look at the rules on rehabilitating existing structures, we need to make sure that the ordinance that shapes or directs that is not too restrictive, that it becomes cost prohibitive for people to really rehabilitate existing historic structures. The reality is in our small town, as far as for new development, we only have 3 areas, and that is South Orange, Valley, and Irvington Avenue. And each area that we develop, we must also look into, can the infrastructure handle it? We have an old infrastructure, and many municipalities are struggling. We have an unfunded mandate to replace a lot of our water lines. So there are a lot of things that we need to look at when we make the decision, whether it's new development or whether it's rehabilitation.
First, I just want to point out, Trustee Deborah Davis-Ford said we wouldn't have joint management regarding the fire department prior to her mailer going to every single household. It was that we would have a joint meeting structure, and that was stated before the mailer went out, so that South Orange and Maplewood would both have a say at the table. Now on to the question, new development versus repurposing and preservation. First, I think I've already proved my record on this. Village Hall is the best example of adaptive reuse that was in the best interest of taxpayers. Everybody was absolutely involved with that conversation, and quite frankly, I believe the private sector is going to do a much better job of preserving that site than what we've seen from prior governing bodies. In the early 1990s, it was $1 million to preserve the building, and then you put money away into a maintenance fund. By 2019, look at where we are today. You know, when I first got into office, it was like, you know, when you defer so much maintenance and you don't have a maintenance reserve, you have to start making hard choices. So when it comes to all the historic sites, especially the ones on the National Historic Registry and the State Registry, those are always going to be preserved. So those are our #1 focus. Next, I think we need to move away from suggesting that we are in control of all this property. People have private property rights. If they choose to want to sell to a business that wants to engage in an adaptive reuse, that is their right as a property owner. If they choose to want to sell to somebody else who wants to come in and propose a different configuration for the building, it might be an addition, it might be improvements to it, it may not always be necessarily in the existing architecture, that is their right. There are provisions under the local redevelopment and housing law to work with the Board of Trustees or go before the Planning Board or the Zoning Board of Adjustment, but we have to be realistic in our expectations of what controls that we have, even when we have home rule when it comes to private property transactions. We can control those through design guidelines and redevelopment plans and redeveloper agreements, which is something that I put in place with a design review board and with very strong standards written into every redeveloper's agreement that has been put into place while I have been in office. So it is a balance between the both, but I just want to caution that we have to focus on economic realities of properties first.
I think I need to remind you guys of the rules, since you weren't here at the beginning of this column. The rules of the debate are that you are to stick to the topic at hand and not go back to a different topic. So the question at hand with regards to what we are discussing.
My apologies.
It's okay. We forgot to remind everybody of that, and I forgot that you weren't here at the beginning. So, the next question is, goes to you. Right, Gina? I think that goes to you. Sheena? Yes. Okay. It is recently come to light. What number? Number 20. I'm so sorry. This is a long one, so I will wait for it to come up on the teleprompter. Our teleprompter. the David teleprompter. I told you this was a long one. Okay, it has recently come to light that what has become known as the Fourth and Valley project has stalled because the developer is having issues with funding the project. This sort of stall seems to keep repeating itself. What tools does the town have to avoid providing preferred developer status to companies that overextend themselves and turn what were thriving spaces into derelict properties? Do you want me to read that again? We got it? Okay.
Hold on, wait, before you start my time, can I just read it one more time?
I can read it again. It has recently come to light that what has become known as Fourth and Valley project has stalled because the developer is having issue with funding the project. This sort of stall seems to keep repeating itself. What tools does the town have to avoid providing preferred developer status to companies that overextend themselves and turn what were thriving spaces into derelict properties?
First, I disagree with the premise. It wasn't a thriving property. It was a contaminated auto yard that was assembled quite a long time ago. The tools and provisions that we have in place are exactly what we just executed. So there are questions about financing of the project. At the time when you run a pro forma, you go off the numbers that are provided to you and you take people at where they are in certain projects. This particular project and the developer has several projects that are happening throughout the state. What was originally going to be a mixed-use development with apartments and retail on the first floor, I was trying to push towards middle missing housing, which is one of our biggest missing household features that we have in this town, especially given the school bond and aging in place initiative. So we've been working with the developer to try and get that to owner occupied condos and not more mixed use developments that focus on apartments. Now the financing for that is a lot different, and one of the things with a 5-year tax abatement that makes it even increasingly more difficult is that banks typically, when they finance projects, they look for the long term. So they want to know and be sure that you're able to finance projects past the 10th year. So when we have a short-term tax abatement in the state that's governed again by local housing and redevelopment law, that is limited to 5 years. It needs to be a minimum of 10. What recourse that we have with developers is exactly what we just put into place. The Board of Trustees is doing a scattered site redevelopment study for that site alone. If we have to take ownership over that property, we will then go out for an RFP and find another developer. It is a phenomenal, is that a duck? Hold on, wait a second, that doesn't count. What will happen is the project is already approved. It's got the planning board approvals, it's got the financing. What was negotiated was $250,000 to the conservancy that was established. All those mechanisms are still in place, and now I can tell you that there's many reputable developers out there who will come in. That is a worst case scenario. So right now we're still in limbo right now, but in the event that the property has to transact, everything that we put into the redeveloper's agreement and the plan will still remain.
I gotta read the question again.
Yeah, it's long.
We can read it for you. It has recently come to light that what has become known as the Fourth and Valley project is stalled because the developer is having issues with funding the project. This sort of stall seems to keep repeating itself. What tools does the town have to avoid providing preferred developer status to companies that overextend themselves and turn things, what were thriving spaces into derelict properties?
Okay,
And please, I'm sorry, before you begin, please turn off your cell phones.
Yeah.
Put them on silent.
Yeah. Well, I think that it is very concerning that this project is stalled. And that is because, again, what was originally proposed, a proposal to change the makeup of the project created a financial challenge, and she stated the details regarding that. I believe that we have several of these types of projects that are abandoned or delayed or have not moved forward. One of the reasons why that's concerning to me is that as far as the negotiation and the details, I have not been involved in sitting at the table. Our column has accurately described the pro forma and all the other financial components of the project at Fourth and Valley. But the main issue and concern is not just the Fourth and Valley project that is stalled, but also the project Lustbader that is stalled, and multiple other projects in our downtown area that leads to some blight. So my concern regarding Fourth and Valley is that either we move forward with the existing project with better financing, and or we, as was indicated, that we find other developers to move this project forward. The opportunity for Fourth and Valley to become a very, very vital part of our community is critical to the development of all of our downtown area.
Okay, next question, and it goes to Deborah Davis Ford first, I think. I keep forgetting that part. Okay, number 19. I'll wait a second for the teleprompter to. The human teleprompter is taking too long. I know. Okay. How do you plan to address the issues of homelessness in our community?
That's a real good question. We see ourselves as a compassionate community, but we like to ignore the fact that we have homelessness in our community because we're an affluent community, but we need to make sure that we have social services or a group or a community in place to deal with that. And there are resources to deal with homelessness. The county has a citizen services department, and the director or a key person in that department is Maurice Brown. He has been contacted many times to deal with homelessness in our train station, and we also have a lot of people homelessness who spend a lot of time in our public library. So I would suggest that South Orange has a individual or maybe even a committee formed to address the homeless or the housing challenged people in partnership with an organization that exists on the county level that has a lot of resources for homelessness. For example, if an individual is approached, they can find temporary housing for them. They can see if they have a medical issue going on, or to look for all sorts of resources. But the other tie into homelessness, if they're a member of our community, is I think it ties into an opportunity for affordable housing. If they're a member of our community, how can we keep them here and find the resources for them to have a better life and be a member of our community that is respected with integrity?
First of all, I'll first point out that I'm absolutely disgusted by some residents who take pictures of homeless people and post them on Soma Lounge. I've received many emails of people literally taking shots of people in our train station and sending them to me and saying doing something about this. So first, let's clean up this attitude, because we have people who are in need, some due to unfortunate circumstances. So let's start from a place of compassion first and realize that a lot of it is first starting with love and wanting to help our neighbors. I put this on Essex County. I think it has been a failure from their part. The county levied our taxes while the school district and the Board of Trustees remained below 2%. The Board of Chosen Freeholders levied 5% on our taxpayers and subsequently also 9% on open space. How are we actually seeing those resources and those taxes be redirected into communities like South Orange and Maplewood? We are not big enough to have our own division of social services. This is something that needs a county-wide different locations and better ways of communicating with our residents. So what we've done in the past is we've enlisted people specifically from New Jersey Transit to be able to hand out leaflets and provide people with options to go to different shelters. But unfortunately, for some people, they would rather stay in a train station than go to some of the shelters that are available right now. I think that we need to recommit portions of the county budget, not just into homeless shelters, but job training mechanisms that will help get people on their feet. And I do agree with Trustee Deborah Davis Ford that affordable housing plays a very large role in this. People who are homeless will absolutely qualify under HUD standards, which is why under my plan over the next, it will be 6 years through 2025, our new path to affordable housing compliance will include 100 new units that services moderate income families, low income families, and very low income families. I have also spoke to members of our clergy to talk about having 1 or 2 units, not that we get COA credits for transient homes for people in immediate need.
Okay, next question, and I think we start with Sheena Collum. Okay, number 4? Sorry, I forgot to do that first. What methods would you use to stimulate civic engagement and communication?
First of all, I totally pride myself on the responsiveness that I've had to residents over the past 4 years. I look out into the audience and I see so many faces that I know. I think that my record speaks for itself. I do not wait for residents to come to me, email me, or set up office hours. I am available via email, via telephone, via Facebook, via Maplewood Online or South Orange Online. Next door, when you need me, I'm there. I've been in Academy Heights several times to meet with the residents here specifically. Several proposals have gone through many iterations. I've hosted well over 75 to 100 neighborhood-centric meetings. I'm leading the master plan effort. I designed that master plan effort. Most master plans have 5 to 6 community feedback meetings. I designed it in a way where we created over 150 ambassadors, saving us well over $200,000 by doing it, and did a train the trainer in a way that we are able to distribute information, collect feedback. I love leveraging our neighborhood associations. It's very frequent that I put out things to the neighborhood associations, but moving forward, and I have this in the platform, looking at new ways of engagement and the different types of engagement that we need, what I'd really love to see is options for people to participate in committees without having to attend in person. One of the biggest disadvantages is that a lot of our meetings happen at nighttime, and for people with small children and for people who are not as mobile, it's a little bit more difficult for them to participate. And we do have the technology, as Summer had referenced, if we do it right, for people to be able to call into meetings and to be able to participate. I love interactivity. So it's a matter of not just expanding. We have so many people involved in this room, so I don't think this room is a problem, but I think that we need to make people better aware of opportunities, which is why I'm proposing a townwide volunteer directory, which is not just municipal, but all the options that people have to get involved, and change the way in which people interact with the government. That doesn't require a 7 to 9 o'clock meeting every Wednesday night or once a month. We can change the mechanisms in which people participate.
I love the ability to touch and interact with people. I'm one of the people that have been accused of having a high level of emotional intelligence. That's just another word for that people relate to me, reach out to me, and I am able to relate to them and support them. I often joke, one of my superpowers is relationships. I can look in this room and see many of the people that I've connected to and that I communicate to on a regular basis. I have been able to, through my relationships, at all different types of profession levels and services, that when someone contacts me or calls me, I have the ability to pick up the phone and get a resource or connection for them. As far as improving civic engagement, I believe that we need to make better use of our own website. We need to make better use of our own Facebook. So there's one place where everyone can go and get the same information. I believe that to improve civic engagement, that we need to be able to have something in place that we can connect different organizations, different interests, and different people to come together and focus on what is important to them and what will benefit their community and their organization. And as village president, I am committed to be accessible and available to all.
Okay, next question, and it's going to, see, I told you guys I was going to forget. Deborah. Deborah's board. Okay. Go into that.
Don't forget that Ford part, my husband's here.
Yes, I know. Hi, Rocky. Okay, number 3. Wait. Okay, what are you going to do about lowering or stabilizing property taxes?
It would be disingenuous to say that we could significantly lower property taxes, but we can have some impact on lowering it, and we can stabilize our taxes. And there are only very few ways to do that, besides the obvious where you can to contain expenses, but the other is rateables. And we talked about the type of development and the important development that we can have that has input from the citizens, but also fits within our community, that can generate rateables that will take off the burden on people who own their homes, and that's one way to stabilize taxes. The other way to stabilize taxes is to look at your tax bill. I stated earlier, and some people really don't understand how their tax bill is divided. 57% of your taxes go to the public school, which is very important to have a strong and healthy public school in our system. 16% to the county and 27% to the municipality. We're looking at how we can address the 57% of the taxes that go to the school system. When the school comes up with a budget in South Orange and Maplewood, or any district, that is supported by the people who own property. My position is that the tax assessment for our school is unfair to the taxpayers in South Orange. We send 33% of our children to the school district, but we pay 43% of the taxes. And that's based on a special assessment for our special charter. We're proposing to go to Trenton and work with our Trenton legislators to change that assessment, that if we send 33% of our students to the school, we should pay 33% of the taxes. That will have a significant impact on reducing the burden of your taxes.
First, I'll begin with disagreeing with the last statement that my colleague made, that we would go to a per pupil way of funding our school district, as I shared with you today, that leads to exclusionary zoning practices. It disproportionately impacts lower income families. In South Orange, if your house is worth $500,000, in Maplewood, if your house is worth $500,000, you pay the same. This is exactly the way that we need to move forward. We cannot be getting into fights with our neighboring town and our strongest partner. We should be fighting for adequate state aid under the school funding formula. And as many of you know, we received $500,000 more this year, leading to $5.6 million in total state aid, and that was a result of partnerships, not creating divisions. Next, I will go back to something that was said a little bit earlier as it relates to ratables, which is something that we need to bring into town. The past prior redevelopment projects, when I was not on the board, had no pro formas. They were given the most aggressive tax abatements I have ever seen. 30 years, the affordable housing was almost non-existent. It led to literally payments off-site for $20,000. Where in South Orange can you build a unit for $20,000? They were bad financial matters. So if anything holds up a redevelopment project, it's because I don't let developers run roughshod all over this town. Our town is valuable, our land is valuable, and we should treat it that way. We are not negotiating from a position of weakness, we are negotiating from a position of strength. Next comes the efficiencies. Right now in New Jersey, we are the #1 in property taxes across the nation. South Orange alone is 15th in the state. This is not sustainable. So when we talk about the biggest cost drivers, it is police and fire. You have to start with police and fire. When I implemented a commission study, yet another commission study, from the ICMA report, it led to immediate savings, a reduction in headcount, and yet crime has gone down. In 2010, we had 57 officers. Today, we have 47 officers. And guess what? Crime is down over 20%. It is not throwing money at problems. It is being more efficient and wise about how we spend taxpayer dollars.
Sheena, you get the next question. Look, I got it right. Okay. Number 21. Okay, this is a long one, so I'm going to probably read it twice. There are several municipal renovation projects planned or in the works, like the library, the Baird, and the police headquarters. How do you plan to manage and pay for all of these, which seem to be slated to happen congruently? So, congruent at the same time. Okay, let's go with at the same time. I didn't write that one. There are several municipal renovation projects planned or in the works, like the library, the Baird, and police headquarters. How do you plan to manage and pay for all of these, which seem to be slated to happen at the same time?
When I was first elected to office, we had our first strategic planning meeting, which included capital project planning. Most of the improvements that you've seen, including the radio improvements that I worked on with the chair of the Public Safety Committee, which was a capital improvement, along with renovations to the tennis court, the skate house, and obviously the improvements in our water utility. And as you saw, the adjustment in the sewer bill, which is a total separate utility, will be upgrading all of that infrastructure. When it comes to these other things, first of all, the sale of Village Hall allowed for the savings to be reinvested back into things that I think the community likes, which is the library and the Baird Center. The way that we are going to successfully be able to complete this project is in the mechanism that I just explained. The ratables are going to count towards this. Efficiencies, especially even just looking at the fire department, the efficiencies from the police department and across the board is that if you follow my plan, I can get you very close on the capital budget alone to a net impact of 0 on taxpayers. You've got to remember, when you add up all these projects all at once, we're looking at about a $25 million bond. We're looking at a 4.5% interest rate. Over the long term, it's a significant amount of money. The more and more I can break into that and be able to reduce the amount that you expect to pay in capital means that I could keep the budget under 2% on the operating expenses and have a net 0 on the actual capital expenses. That would be historic, but we have to get on board with change. We have to be ready for change. We cannot keep doing the same things that municipal governments have always done, which is go back and tap the well of taxpayers taxpayers. As Bob Zuckerman mentioned, the difference in South Orange is we do not have commercial ratables like any other town. We don't have Short Hills Mall, we don't have Route 10. So 90% of the burden is falling on homeowners. It has to be shifted into commercial districts. And the other thing that really needs to come to fruition, and I say this as a proud Seton Hall pirate, $480,000 to the town in terms of a donation is significantly short of what they should be paying. They demand very high police and fire services and rescue services. It's our #1 priority, so they need to step up and pay more to the town.
The renovation projects like the library, the Barrett, and the police headquarters, Sheena had pretty much covered how it's being paid for, but one of the concerns or issues that we have is that we pretty much reached our maximum on bonding, and we have several other projects that we need to address. The Seton Hall opportunity is a really good one in regards to keeping, having another increase in our ratables and our revenue and our contribution to our tax base to address some of these future projects. My real concern about the library, the Barrett, and the police headquarters is how do we make sure that all of these are met and kept on time and on budget.
We're going to go with one last question before our final question. So I just pulled it to save time. The latest Community Coalition on Race Report, 18, so sorry, forgot that part. The latest Community Coalition on Race report states that we are becoming less racially and economically diverse. What ideas do you have to address it?
Affordable housing. It's very, very simple. The reason why the changing in the diversity or the reduction in people of color are here is that on the most part, many of those individuals have a lower income than the white population. That's just a fact. So how do we make sure that we recruit a diverse population is to have affordable housing. But there are a lot of our population who are high earners, upper class and middle class, and they are so not moving to South Orange or staying. And the reason for that is that they feel that there are concerns or issues of being a part of the community. So we need to address a sense of inclusivity. We also need to address affordable housing. And we also need to make sure that everyone feels that they belong here. The racial diversity, as we know, in our progressive community has always been very important. But also the diversity for economic diversity is also so critical that we have people who are working class, middle class, and also at the high earning. And if we have that diversity in that mix, it makes us for a healthy community. So we need to be able to make sure that we are able to keep our fire people, our workers here. We need to be able to make sure that we have our teachers who can afford to stay here. And that is to address our affordable housing, which Sheena Collum had talked about earlier with our meeting our COA goals is one way to be able to keep our people here in our beloved village of South Orange.
So this one's a really tough one, and it's pretty devastating because as we went through the master plan process, one of the things that attracted so many people to South Orange and Maplewood was the actual diversity. I've read the entire Community Coalition on Race report, and the statistics about what we're looking at in the kindergarten levels and the first grade, second grade, is that the demographics are changing, and it's very alarming because we're going to lose that special and uniqueness that we have. I will first agree with my colleague on the affordable housing. South Orange, it has been absolutely devastating what South Orange did. It used regional contributions distribution agreements. It sent its affordable housing obligations to poor or lower income households. I changed that immediately. 1 in every 5 units that are going to be built in South Orange in the next 6 years, if the board adopts my plan, is going to be for affordable units. And that's when you actually start to see lower income people, and you definitely get diversity out of that as well. If you were going to look at Third and Valley and the number of people on the wait list, it was a total of 1,800 for 21 units. So we have a very high demand there. So we first have to start with recommitting ourselves, being the socially progressive people that we claim to be, and start building those affordable units as soon as possible. The next thing that I would say is that the Community Coalition on Race, and they've done this on many occasions, is that they are continuously trying to attract people through the things that we celebrate as our values, the things that they do, like the integrated play groups. Families that come here are coming for a very specific experience. We like to believe it's the train station or the housing stock. It's because you know that you're coming into an inclusive community. We have our ups and downs, but no doubt in my mind, I do believe that most people who come to South Orange believe that everybody truly does belong here, and we want to live in a diverse and really engaging community. And so what we do to make sure that the people who are in the outer skirts of the metropolitan area and know this is the type of place that they want to be able to raise their family, where they will get a good education, where they will have access to mass transportation, will they have access to housing and jobs. So I think part of it is marketing and part is public policy on the things that need to be done immediately in order to make sure that we have inventory for the people who will come in and help make our community more diverse. I see the stop sign.
I didn't hear the thing. But I got it. Okay. This is the final question.
What number?
It is number 5.
Number first. My bad. Okay, final question for the candidates. What do you want us to remember as your legacy? We are starting with Deborah. Sheena.
Okay, first of all, I want to point out that even though I'm running against Trustee Davis Ford, she has been a friend of mine for 12 years. And so despite how this election is and some of the things that I feel about it, she is a very special person to me. I think I'm a kind person. I get frustrated. And if I was going to have a legacy, it's that I believe in good government. I'm a public policy wonk. I ran for 4th grade Board of Education. Everybody let me get those signatures, and then I realized what ageism really looked like when they told me I couldn't run. So some people are like, oh, you know, I'm not a career politician. I'm like, hi, I totally am. I was like class president every single year. I love good government. I read all about public policy. I sleep with Robert's Rules of Order. And so when it comes down to it, I want my legacy to be that I am uniting communities. I believe I'm on record. South Orange and Maplewood, our future is together as literally combining our 2 towns. 565 municipalities. We are so inefficient. Our average property tax bill is $17,500. If I have to lose my position as village president, I would gladly give it up for more efficient government. Everything that I've done for the 4 years in office has been about the efficiencies that government can produce when we are bold in our choices, when we become real leaders, when we stop operating in silos where you walk 10 feet and you're in a different town with a whole new form of government. I mean, the best of South Orange and Maplewood will come out when we combine our collective resources and our collective assets and really truly show the state what type of community that we can be. My additional legacy that I would love to have is to be remembered as somebody who's a lot of fun. I am a very goofy person. I'm like a Korean ninja. I am all about Game of Thrones right now. I'm an average person. Man, Game of Thrones is kind of like local elections in South Orange. I like to have fun. I laugh all the time so much that it's like I'm in the back of a convertible and my face is stuck. I love what I do. I enjoy the people in this community, and I love this position, and I hope you vote for me on May 14th.
Hi, to remind you all, if you don't know, I'm Deborah Davis Ford. I love South Orange, my beloved village. I'm honored to have the love of my life, my childhood sweetheart, my husband Rocky here, my daughter Rachel. I've come from the value of serving and caring. I'm blessed to have my parents who are 86 and 87 years old, and it's from them that I got the DNA of service in my bones and blood. We supported people in need. We did what do you call the telephones for the March of Dimes, and so in this community of South Orange, I stepped up to serve for the big paycheck. For several years. And that's because I didn't have anything to do. When I first became a village trustee, I was very much involved in my corporate experience. I managed multi-million-dollar business units as an executive. I helped build a company from nothing to a multi-million-dollar company with a partner. And then now in my current life, I manage a legislative branch of governance for the county, for the county elected officials. So I want my legacy to be is that when I was asked, and I was asked initially, that I stood up and served, that I care, that I was a very, very important part of the things that have gone well in South Orange. South Orange is a great community, and of all the things that you have been here in the last 12 years, we've been a part of it. No decision is made without the board getting 4 votes. And everything, and I'm going to claim this, my legacy is that everything that was good that had at least 4 votes, it was one of mine. So I asked you to allow me to leverage my experience and my leadership to be your village president. Vote for me on May 14th, Deborah Davis Ford. I love South Orange.
Thank everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you, candidates, for being here. We are amazed. I also have to thank the Academy Heights Neighborhood Association and the committee that put together this debate. It was a committee of a number of us who did this.
Thank you everybody for coming tonight. Please be careful when you go out to the parking lot. It's pretty dark. Don't get hit. And please vote.